So we are working in week 11, and I'm going to go ahead and share the screen and walk you through a few things. This is a little bit small right now. I'm going to make it bigger in a sec, but I want it to be small for a second so you can see how little there is left. We have week 12, week 13, week 14, and week 15 after this. So we're getting really close to the end. In week 12, we're going to put the essay together as a draft. And then in week 13, we turn it in. In week 12, we turn it in. We put it together, we edit it, and we turn it in. And then in week 13, we start our drama unit. And week 4, we do... in week 14, we're doing working on the character analysis of the drama, and then in week 15, we're finishing up. Now, the character analysis of a drama is not going to be super difficult. It's going to be a quick essay. Now that you know how to quote and cite things, it'll be very easy to put together. So that's why that's kind of in a quick turnaround. You needed a lot of guidance on how to do this research essay, so we've done it one piece at a time, but the drama essay is just going to go back to being a 5-paragraph essay instead of a 9-paragraph research essay, so that's going to seem really easy after the stretching that you've done so far. So that's just a little preview of what's coming up. We are going to talk about works cited lists for the patterns for the short story analysis today. This is the handout I'd like you to use for those patterns. You do have the Purdue OWL citation machine linked here and a video for how to use it, and you can use that as well. But please use this handout first and foremost, and I'm going to go over that handout with you. This week we are turning in 2 paragraphs about our Alabama virtual library sources, or our sources that we found through the Gale literature database, and we're going to be writing about those. So let me make this bigger so we can see it together, go over those instructions, and then we'll build that model paragraph together again, just like we've been doing. Let me move y'all down here. All right. So it says, please write your 2 source paragraphs for the articles of literary criticism that you located through AVL last week, and then draft your concluding paragraph to the essay. Please remember to follow the source paragraph model we've already reviewed, and remember that concluding paragraphs complete the following jobs. Summarize and assess the examples and explain how they work together to prove your thesis. They restate your thesis with more confidence, like there I told you this was true and now I've proved it. They explain why this understanding of the text is important to readers of the text. You've got to give that big so what. Think of yourself talking to a surly teenager who thinks this is a stupid story and doesn't want to read it, and you're trying to convince them that they should, right? And then tell your reader what to do or think next, and let them know what you want them to do with the ideas that you've presented. To remind you, in week 6, I presented you with a sample student essay that goes over how the whole essay is put together. This is a good place to look for the concluding paragraph for a model of that. Not going to model the concluding paragraph for you today because I think that's already done in the sample student essay. It's a concluding paragraph. You worked on those in 101. We worked on those with the poetry essay. I think you can do it. Now, what I am going to go over though right now is, I'm going to move you up just a little to do it, is how to put together one of those paragraphs for the AVL sources, okay? So what I've done here is my prep work, okay? And my prep work means that I have copied and pasted a few things into a Word document that I'm going to need to put the paragraph together. First, I've copied the citation information, and I'm going to show you where that comes from. Continue session. Where is my... Okay. So I've got the article open here, and we're going to talk about what I'm grabbing from it. I'm grabbing the title, I'm grabbing the author, right? I counted the number of paragraphs, and then I went down to the bottom and I grabbed the source citation information, okay? So when you're looking here, you can see that a few things happened. Here's the citation information. I put that at the bottom because I'm going to use that last. I put the title at the top and then the author. And then what I did is I did put, and that should be underlined, I did put where it came from. This is the periodical that it came from. And then you can see that I have 3 quotes here that I pulled. And one of them is too long. And I did that on purpose. I grabbed, and this is I'm sorry, I put this up here with the basic stuff that I'm going to use to, actually I'm going to put it down below because that's not what I use to introduce it. That goes with the citation information. So I'm just going to put that down below the citation information because I need that. So I pulled 3 quotes from it that I thought sounded real good and sounded like they supported what I was talking about. You can notice that this one, I only took the first half of the sentence and I did points of ellipsis so that I didn't have to use the second part of the sentence. Here I did the second part of the sentence and there are points of ellipsis to indicate that I didn't use the first part of the sentence. And here I haven't figured out what I'm going to use yet. And we're going to read that out loud and talk about what you do when you find a large passage that you'd like to talk about, but you don't want to use the whole thing in one chunk because you know I don't want them that long. Yeah? Okay. So in a source paragraph, what's my first job? Somebody tell me what my first job is.
Introduce the source.
Yes, sir. You introduce the source. I'm going to put this all into the same thing, and I'm going to make this not blue and not underlined. Not underlined. Okay. So, there's one job before we introduce the source. What is it?
A topic sentence.
Yes, a topic sentence. So what we want to do is we want to look at the ideas that are in the quotes here and write a sentence that's about those ideas and my ideas. So truthful representation of human capacity for evil is one of them. Trying to assert his dignity in a world that treats him as subhuman. And then we're talking about hunger and violence and greed and things like that. Okay? So my topic sentence, once again, is going to try to connect to my thesis and what part of my thesis this article is backing up. So I'm going to start with one of the things that we see in the Pearl is Steinbeck sense of how poor people are the victims of the worst of human behavior. Okay, now I don't want that bold. That's bold because the title was bold, so take it out of bold. Remember, when you're copying and pasting, it messes with your formatting in other places. All right, now that I've got a topic sentence, what do I need to do next? I got 3 things here. What do I do with them? I've got an author, a title, and a periodical title. What do I do with them?
You introduce the title.
Right. How many sentences should I use to introduce these 3 pieces of information?
3.
3. I like that. Yes. If you've got 3 pieces of information across, aim for 3 sentences to talk about them. Do I have to do them in this order? Title, author, periodical? No. Okay. So a scholar named Adrian Atkins Warfield wrote an article about Steinbeck's interest in talking about the suffering of the poor. All right. So I'm just giving the author's name, but I'm also taking the other half of that sentence to do a little bit of summary, right? And when I say give me 3 sentences to introduce it, the reason for that is that if you're doing just author, you can also summarize. And then if you're doing just title, you can do a little summarizing, so that you're not trying to do, here's all these 3 things, and some summary, and a quotation, all at the same time. We just want to take it nice and slow. Now this is telling me I've spelled Adrian incorrectly, so I'm going to double check it that it matches what I copied. A-D-R-I-E. I am dyslexic, so I definitely, when something gets underlined, even if it's a name, I use it to help me worry. Because I have spelled the name Brian as brain all the way through an essay. So we've got to be really careful with the spelling of names. So yeah, make sure if it's underlined, double check. And it's not underlined anymore. I liked it when I spelled it right. So nobody's perfect. Make sure you're checking your work. All right. I'm going to keep this one real simple. The article was called Steinbeck and the Tragedy of Progress, period, quotation mark. Not the other way around, not quotation mark, period. All right, so now I'm going to actually get rid of these. I copied and pasted them, and I don't need them anymore. I just wanted them in front of me when I was typing. The article, which was collected in, and then I'm going to go ahead and move that up. And then make sure I'm not underlining comma. Stuffy. Study of several of Steinbeck. My keyboard's off to the side because it has to be plugged in right now, so my typing's worse than usual. Is a study of several of Steinbeck's works that think about poverty. It talks about how Kino in The Pearl is living in, now I'm going to say is trying to succeed in a world stacked against him. Okay. And then I'm actually not going to use these quotes in the order that they appeared in the article. I'm going to use them in the order that they support what I'm trying to say. Okay? So I'm going to grab this one from paragraph 28, and I'm going to move that up. I'm going to put that right here. Is that correct? Am I good now? Aaron, what did I do wrong?
You don't have a quote integration.
I don't have any quote integration. Right. So the author points dang it. to check that it reads grammatically, right? And that it's all the same size. So I have to read it through and make sure that my reader can't hear where the quotation marks go and that the grammar is grammatical all the way through. The author points out that Kino's use of the pearl to try to buy medical services is an attempt to assert his dignity within a society that often treats Kino as subhuman. Now, I've said Kino twice, so I'm going to go bracket, and I'm going to change it to a pronoun so that it sounds better. And you can do that. You can change something if you've already said Kino here and want to use a pronoun here. That's okay. Just take the name and replace it with the pronoun and put brackets around anything that you are changing. What do I need to do after I have, whoop, I got an extra period in there. That period gets moved to the end of my sentence. What do I do after I have quoted and cited? Devin, what happens next? Devin, can you unmute and tell me what I do next? Good. Nikayla, can you unmute and tell me what I should do next? Zakia, can you unmute and tell me what I should do next? Are you driving?
You're supposed to talk about it a little more.
That's right. We're supposed to analyze it. Analyzing means that we say why it's important. Why is that sentence important? You tell me. Or we can make sure that we are connecting it to the piece a little bit. We could say the doctor doesn't see Kino as an equal and doesn't care if his child lives or dies. Okay. All right. I'm going to get ready for my next quote with a short sentence. That's evil. Right? It is a little evil. And Steinbeck wanted to expose that kind of evil. Okay, now I'm going to put this up. What should I do for quote integration here? Chantel, what do you think? What would be easy?
He's safe. I don't know.
Well, who's saying it? It's not a he. Who's saying it?
Cited.
Nope. Who's saying it?
The author? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Who's the author?
What's her name? Adriana? Oh,
I can't seem to recognize this song.
Siri thinks you're singing to her. Warfield. Yes, Adrian is her first name. Do we ever use the author's first name? Ever?
No.
No. Why, Courtney?
To show respect. We don't know them like that.
That's the best explanation ever. We don't know them like that. That's fantastic. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Yes, Zakia, I understand. Thank you. Your safety is really important to me. Thanks for letting me know. Okay. So we are just going to pop her name in here. Warfield. Spell it right. I went to admit somebody from the waiting room. One sec. Let me make sure nobody's in the waiting room. Bryce is coming in. And then, all right, now we're back. Are we still sharing? We are not still sharing. Hang on. Screen share. All right. And I was here. Control Z. What? Okay. We're getting some weird things here. Warfield observes, comma, quote. I'm going to keep that one real simple. The last one was woven into a long sentence, and that was tricky. I'm tired of that, so this time I'm just going to do a Warfield observes. Okay? What do I have to do after every quote? Analysis. So again, we connect it to the text, or say something about it. Steinbeck is using his story to show a problem in society as a whole. Okay? And then I'm going to look at this, and this is the next thing I want us to think about together. Okay? I'm going to make this a little bigger, actually, and I want somebody to read this passage. Let's see. Monisha, can you read that passage? This one right here that's highlighted. I can make it bigger for you. Here we go.
Steinbeck the intensity of the evil in terms of the goodness of what is not. Hunger is intensified by the smell of food that promotes memory of its taste, while loneliness is intensified by the memory of love before it was withheld. Similarly, the violence and greed that follow the perilous discovery stand in sharp relief of the peace. La Paz and generosity as demonstrated by the symbol of villagers who follow Juana and Kino as they seek medical care for their sick baby. Theito that previously existed in the community.
Okay, woo! It's got some really good stuff in it, right? It defines the intensity of the evil in terms of the goodness of what is denied. But then it's got a bunch of stuff I don't really need, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it 2 quotes. I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to do this one, and I'm going to make it shorter. So I'm going to, and they both come from paragraph 10, right? So these are going to go quickly together. But we need some more points of ellipses here because this one is still long. Sharp relief to the peace and generosity that previously existed in the community. Does that make sense now? Read it out loud, somebody. Jakaya, can you read the new one out loud? Just that phrase.
The violence and greed that follow the perilous discovery stand in sharp relief to the peace and generosity of previously existed.
Okay, so is that easier to read than what we started with?
Yes.
Does it make grammatical sense? Okay, so you are going to be reading things that sometimes are really long and thick and have these big interruptions in them. And you can manipulate them a little bit to make sure that they make sense. But please don't manipulate the sense out of them. Notice I didn't erase anything that I needed grammatically. Right? You've got to read it out loud and make sure it sounds like a normal person talking before you use it. Yes? Okay, so I'm going to get these in one at a time. And I need quote integration there again. In her article, what's her field? Warfield. Points out that, comma, quote. Get rid of that period. We need one over here instead. She claims, comma, quote. Okay, and those went together originally, so in this case, I'm not going to put a ton of analysis in between them because they were together in the text. I'll analyze them when I'm done. Okay, so when you have a really long quote, break them up. You could put an analysis in here, or maybe some summary. She says that remember we took out a passage about them the community following them as they go to try to get help, that the way the community follows Kino as he tries to get help for his baby illustrates, quote, the violence and greed that follow the Pearl's discovery, and that those things, quote, stand in sharp relief. Okay? So again, I'm manipulating the quote a lot to fit a sentence that sounds good. She says, who's the she? That's Warfield. She says that the way the community follows Kino as he tries to get help for his baby illustrates the violence and the greed that follow the Pearl's discovery, and that those things, oops, we need a comma here. It's a compound sentence. Don't forget your commas. And that those things stand in sharp relief to the peace and generosity that previously existed in the community. So it can take some patience with manipulating these really long quotes that you might see in a piece of literary criticism and getting them boiled down to where they fit into a sentence of yours. Okay? What do we end every source paragraph with? Bryce, what do we end every source paragraph with? Devin, what do we end every source paragraph with?
Citation.
No, we have a citation. What comes after every citation? And every quote and citation is followed by the same thing.
Analysis.
Analysis. Very good. Smart, smart. Okay, so we're going to end with analysis. In particular, Tylandria, what should this little sentence of analysis do?
It should, what can I say?
It's
it shouldn't be long, but you should try to talk about it.
Yeah, what's it got to connect to? Here at the end of the paragraph. It's got to make a really essential connection.
Not to the thesis, is it?
Yes, to the thesis. You're smarter than you're allowing yourself to be here, girl. Yeah. Yes. So we need to analyze and bring it back around to the thesis, which if you've been watching me do these models all the way through, you know is about how the lack of medical care can be deadly, right? So Steinbeck wants with an S, to show that the poor are not only without access to medical care, they are also without any compassion from their community. That is a deadly combination. Right? Okay, because I said I wanted to prove that it was deadly. Right. All right. So you can see this paragraph is a pretty big paragraph, yes? Yes, the ending of every paragraph needs to go back to the thesis. Courtney, that's a brilliant question, and the answer is yes. Every single time we offer our readers something about the author's biography or about the cultural context, we're making a connection with the story, and we're making a connection with our thesis. I love it that you're making notes. That makes me super happy. You're my favorite student right now because you're making notes and asking smart questions. All right, who's my next favorite student? Let's see. So this is a pretty big paragraph. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 quotes, and I did 4 quotes to keep them each short. I wanted to use that big booger of a quote for my third, but it was too big to use all at once, so I broke it into 2. That's okay. As a matter of fact, that's a great way to do it. All right. Questions about this model? Awesome. So we're going to take a break from this and come back to it in a minute. But we're going to go over the handout in Blackboard on, actually, you know what? Let me stop the share for a second and stop the recording. Make sure you don't have questions before we move on. Okay? We are, whoops, not that, screen share. I just got to get back to it. There we go. The recording was doing something weird. So I'm just going to walk you through this handout one more time. Your website pages, that's for biography, cultural context, and historical context, are going to follow this pattern that's the first thing on the handout, right? So you even see an example of one of the websites we worked with. You see another example that doesn't have an originally published date. You see one without an author here that comes from WebMD. So there are 3 different situations of different things that you might see here that you might need to use as a pattern. Remember, at the top it explains the pattern to you and what you're trying to create. Then we have the Mla format for an article from a database. A good starting point for that one, to remind you, is to copy and paste what's given to you at the bottom of the article for citation, and then put it next to one of these samples, like maybe copy and paste one of these samples into that document, and then get them to match, and then take the one out that's from the sample. And then this is the format for a PDF. So let's talk about this. Determine the type of work that you're citing and cite appropriately. End the entry with the name of the digital format, which in this case is PDF. If the work doesn't follow traditional parameters for citation, give the author's last name, the name of the work, the date of creation, and the location. Okay? So here we have, oops, that went the wrong way. Here we have all 4 entries. So we have the author's last name, and remember, please remember to use Gilman and not Stetson. Gilman, Charlotte Perkins, period. The yellow wallpaper, hyphenated, period. Make sure you're copying the capitalization correctly. I've given you the years to use for each one. I've told you the hosting organization, National Library of Medicine, Houston Community College Learning Web, Radnor Township School District, and WordPress is where these PDFs were published, who published them. Then you note that it was a PDF, period, and the date that it was accessed. So you don't need the URL in this one either. You don't need the URL in these, right? What you do need the URL in is for the websites, okay? Questions while I still have the handout open on this handout, and then I'll make sure everybody remembers where to find the handout. Are you sure you don't have questions? This is really picky stuff. Okay? Then let's make sure that we know that the handout is here. It's one of the first things in the week 11 materials. Make sure you are watching this video. Make sure you're watching this handout. I will post the sample source paragraph, literary criticism source paragraph handout, as well as today's recording. In our discussion board, we are doing a works cited list. Let's make sure that we go over this. Copy a draft of your works cited list. How many items should be in your works cited list? 6. What are the 6? Aaron, what are the 6?
The short story close reading.
Yep.
A pretty historical, cultural, biographic, and then the 2 Alabama Virtual Library.
Right. So the 2 literary criticism articles from Alabama Virtual Library or from Gale Literature through our database here at Lawson. The 3 web sources, and then your short story itself, right? So we're putting those in. They should be alphabetized by the author's last name. If you don't have an author, you should alphabetize by the first significant word in the title. Okay? So work on those. It says you will not be able to double space or indent, so please don't worry about that in this workshop. Just skip a line between entries and make sure you are underlining or italicizing your titles for periodicals. Make sure that your article titles are in quotation marks. I'm asking you to proofread at least 3 peers' posts. If they have made an error, help them identify it. If you are not sure whether something is correct, ask them to check it. Somebody read this out loud to me, please. Chantel, can you read this out loud?
It said a body will be error free. So you just compliment your peers' work. You won't get credit for responses to peers. Okay. If you tell somebody it all looks great, you are flunking the quiz. Because these responses to peers are a quiz on whether or not you can find the errors that are there. There are errors there. If there weren't going to be errors there, we wouldn't be workshopping this, y'all. I make errors when I do them the first time around. It's just the nature of the beast. So if you're not sure if it's correct or not, like if yours is one way and theirs is another way, you can pose it as a question, like, I thought it was supposed to look like this and yours doesn't look like this. I thought we didn't need the URL in the anything except for the websites, and you've got it in all of them. You can absolutely ask it as a question, but I want to see the critical thinking. I want to see you looking at that handout while you're looking at your peers' posts and playing that game that says, this doesn't match. Here's what doesn't match, okay? So that's a quiz. So make sure, number one, after Wednesday and you do your initial post, please, please, please set a reminder in your phone to go back and respond to peers on Sunday. And number two, make sure that you are not just saying it looks great, because it doesn't look great. And that's not, so you're not impressing me with that. The second part of it is a quiz of your editing skills. Okay, it's a little bit of help for them, but you know I'm going to go in and help everybody, so that's not the point. The point is practicing your editing skills, because if you can find it in somebody else's, you can find it in your own. In my 101 class, when we did this for their research essay, I had a student recently who responded to his own and said, I'm going to respond to mine as a fourth because I see a problem that I made, and made a correction on their own. That was awesome. I think you should also help each other, but if you notice as you're correcting other people's, if you notice that you made a mistake in your own, you can point that out as well. All right. I'm going to make sure we see everything in this week that we need. We have a discussion board due Wednesday. That's the Works Cited List workshop. Remember, responses to peers are due Sunday with the rest of the work, and then those AVL sources and conclusions. And I will put the recording of today's class as well as the model that we created, in there as a handout, so that sample paragraph will be there for those AVLs. And then that'll be all of week 11. Remember that in week 6, we have the sample student essay that you can use as a model for your concluding paragraph. All right? Let's see. I have to move you for a second so I can get to my tools here.